What an honor for me. Asking you some questions. So, Jean, let me start by asking you. You are known for your motion to create Black History Month, but your legacy is so much more in Parliament. Tell us about your time in Parliament and some of the highlights. It will maybe give me hope.
Minister, well, first of all, I want to say that I know good Toronto French. So I won't waste it tonight. Anglais seulement. Talking about, what was the question?
Well, that you are known for Black History Month, but your legacy is bigger than that, and I want to know about some highlights when you were in Parliament.
I was in a place built by men to do men's work. I was the first Black woman to walk into that place. No Black woman had walked there and left breadcrumbs for me to follow. So I had to find my own way. First of all, I had to see and understand what this responsibility was. I had knocked at thousands and thousands of doors in Etobicoke Lakeshore. My member is here, Jamie Maloney. And the discussion when I got there was all about debt and deficit, softwood lumber,
Okay, quite the
yogurt and ice cream, boneless beef. And I kept reflecting on that because no one at all the doors I knocked said, when you get to Ottawa, vote for boneless beef. So I focused on the things that were in my belly, the fire that was in my belly, and they were social justice issues. I had spent about 30 years in education, starting from classroom to vice principal to supervisory officer. By the way, when I say I spent 30 years, I must explain that I am turning 89 and that, all right, you have to be born in Grenada, the Isle of Spice. You have to breathe the sea air, and you have to be a good girl going to convent high school with Mother Immaculata. But anyway, having been years in education, teaching social studies, I taught nothing about the indigenous peoples. I taught nothing about the role and responsibility of nations. I taught nothing about the relationship with the crown. At the same time, I knew that there was just something out there and that my students needed to know that. I was hanging out with Black people who came from Halifax, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Southwestern Ontario. They were excellent hairdressers, they were excellent dancers and musicians, and great people to hang out with. But there were 5- and 6th-generation Black Canadians, and I knew nothing about that, neither did I teach my students anything. At the same time, there were waves blowing from the south to the north, which we copied sometimes. The human rights issues, the issues around the celebration of Black History Month, which started over 100 years ago in the United States. And I thought, we should be able to do this. We should be able to teach our young people. And so as the discussion went from one side to the next, boneless beef, softwood lumber, Canada is going down the drain in a basket, I started asking people about teaching African Canadian history, about Indigenous peoples' history, and having that not sidelines and footnotes, but being part of the script.
That's a big legacy. You are always active in your community. Tell us about the Augustine Center for Young Women's Empowerment.
That is a long history, going back to the assistance and the help that I've had over the years. I think it was, many of you would know that I came on what was at the time the West Indian Domestic Scheme. And that was a program that Canada had to help young people to be employed. So if you were between the ages of 18 and 24, you can come to Canada. You sign up that you can come to Canada, that you had no responsibility, no boyfriend, and spouse, and the responsibility that you can come work in the home of a Canadian family and at the same time get landed immigrant status. So of course I jumped at it, I wrote my name down and I said, take me, take me, take me. I'm going to Canada. So I came on that in 1960 on that program. The program started, I think, about 1957 or 58. So I was around the third cohort to come to Canada. But I had learned very, very early that you joined, you participated, you partnered, you collaborated with people in the community. When you grow up in a small area where everybody knows everybody, everybody knows whose house that is, what family lived there, everybody knows whose husband stepped out with somebody. Then it meant also that you had to be engaged with community. And so I was always engaged with community. I was always asked to volunteer. So when I came to Canada, it was very easy for me to look around and say, where is community? How can I become engaged with community? And at the same time, many of you who are as old as I am may remember, by 1960, we had no Charter of Rights and Freedom. We had no Human Rights Code. We had no Landlord and Tenant Act. We had no police-community relations. We had no school board talking to us about the education of our children. So it was ripe for activism and it was ripe for advocacy. And so I joined with everybody. And I said to someone the other day, you know, the streets of Toronto is very quiet on the weekend around Queen's Park. Because every weekend we used to be out there with drums, with pots, with microphones, bringing to the attention of Canadians what was important. And so I participated. I pushed barriers. I was not the first one at the beginning of the demonstration, but I was always there, helping, advising, writing the placards, because when you go to St. Joseph's Convent School, you learn to write cursive and you learn to print. And so I had really good handwriting, very good for making posters. And so that was the beginning of a lot of activities in the community. and a lot of pushing to ensure that our voices were there. So that by 1971, when we asked the question, or by 1970, when we asked the question, who are we in Canadian society? Are we just English and French? And we went around that we asked, there was a time we used to go around and ask people questions and come back with tabulated data that we examined. The response was that we were not just French and English, but that we were multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-diverse Canada. So that gave me the leverage and the voice to say, if this is who we are, then it's important that all the voices be there. And then later on, Minister, by 1982, when we affirmed that we are now grown up, we want our Constitution back. Queen, come over here and bring the Constitution. We want it. We want to see what we have in there. And when we looked, we saw that what we said in 71 was not there. There was nothing about the way in which we would protect each other in this society. And so, of course, we mended this with our Charter of Rights and Freedom. And Section 15 just gave me the energy to get out there and say, you cannot discriminate against me on the basis of my age, my sex, my creed, my place of origin, my nationality. So let's march, guys. Let's make things happen. And so those were the things in those days, in those early days, that were affirming and that created and built community.
That's great. So I have another question. When young people learn about your work decades from now, what do you most hope they take away?
What would I most hope
They take away
that they take away?
from your work.
I met with some young people today, and I was so happy to see the glint in the eyes, to see the energy, to have them tell me what courses they are taking and the goals that they have for themselves and their future. And so what I do at the Center for Young Women's Empowerment is really to help them to say, look, you must know about non-traditional jobs. You must know about those things that create self-improvement and development. You must have financial literacy and questions around money. You must know about that. You must also know that there are mentors, and we have millions of you in the house today, that there are mentors and people who would help you to reach your full potential, and that we'll help to find those people for you. Because I was mentored. I'm so happy I'm meeting with Mr. Chrétien for breakfast in the morning. I hope he's ready for me. Because I will remind him of the time when we had so many of our colleagues who were saying we have to stand with our friends from the South. And he used to call me Madam Augustine. I was his parliamentary secretary. And they got up one by one, how they do in caucus, one by one. We have to go with the Americans are our friends. The British has found out that there is whatever there is in Iraq, and we have to go. And he looked over at me and he said, Madam Chrétien, Madam Augustine, we're not going. We're not going. This was important, and that was the kind of man he was, and that was the kind of boss he was, and that was the kind of leader that he was. That he said what he meant, and he meant what he said.
During your time as Ontario's first Fairness Commissioner, what systemic barriers surprised you most? And which reforms are you proudest of?
Huh. I was asked by the government at the time. I had left the Parliament of Canada. I even I had 4 elections. I was heading for the 5th election, and then you told me that you had the next prime minister, and I was standing in the way of the next prime minister. So I left the Parliament of Canada. The Fairness Commission, or the legislation that created the commission, was about 2 paragraphs in length. And I was given the page and said, go do it. Go do what? There were stories in the newspapers day after day about engineers who had come here with qualifications and were driving cabs. There's a friend of mine who tells a story of having a pain on her side, couldn't find the doctor, raced down the street, flagged a cab, and within $4.15, she had a diagnosis from the cab driver. So there were all kinds of stories like that. So there were 40 or 41 regulatory bodies, and those bodies regulated the profession. In other words, they say who can come in and who can go, and they were the rules were fluid, right? They would tell you you go and do 10 more courses. They would tell someone else you have to write 3 more exams. It was just regulated by the regulators in their own interest. And so here I had this piece of paper, and I went to their door and I said, now, we'll have some rules here. I was popular then. But with the exception of 2 or 3 professions, we were able to make really, really good progress. The lawyers came on board very early. Let's hear it for the lawyers. The College of Physicians and College of Physicians and Surgeons said, "You're not making rules for us." I'm making light of this, but it was really hard work to bring 41 bodies together. And the commissioner who followed me is in the room. I met him here tonight. And he continued. He's here?
Yes.
But folks, I must tell you about Canada and the reputation that Canada has. Because once we started going, every country followed us. The Australians, the New Zealanders, the Europeans, all of the Europeans. Some of them sent their folks to see how we were making changes to the regulatory bodies. And so now I think that we all understand what the issue of fairness was within the profession.
Thank you. I have another question. We wouldn't have the famous 5 statue in Ottawa without you. Tell us about that journey. Tell us about this. What the one young.
The famous 5. If any of you read Hansard, go to Hansard. It makes really, really good reading. The day when I tried to put the motion that the famous 5 statue could be on Parliament Hill. Well, first of all, I was chair of Women's Caucus at the time, and some women from the West came with a plan because the Famous Five did most of their work and advocacy in the West, and they had funding, something. And so they asked if the statue of the Famous Five could be put on Parliament Hill. And of course, Sheila Copps, who was the Minister for Canadian Heritage at the time, did did the work and found out that we could not put the statue of the Famous Five on Parliament Hill or the statue of anyone but monarchs or prime ministers who were nation builders. So we couldn't come up with a prime minister who was a nation builder. And we had Queen Victoria in the library somewhere. But we can put soldiers on horses around the building. And so we had to rescind that statute that said what could be put on the hill. So once that was rescinded, is that good grammar? Then it was open now for me to work get the motion to put the statue of the Famous Five on the hill and to work with the community and the women's community to get the statue done. So we worked at getting the motion. We worked with the House, with the Speaker, to get the motion to give me the opportunity to stand up, to put the motion. We wanted unanimous consent. But something happened a few days before, or a week before. Mr. Chrétien had the gall to throw John Nunziata out of the caucus. And I was a member of the caucus, and he was not going to do anything to give a member of the Liberal caucus any kind of leverage. So every time I stand up, Mr. Speaker, you will find that there is consent to the motion. No, says John. And it went on the whole day. It was like cat and mouse. He sent for his staff brought about 5 boxes of Christmas cards, and he was signing Christmas card and waiting for me to speak, and then he would shout no. And of course, you know the rule. Once one person says no, the motion goes down. It makes really good reading when you go 3 pages of Hansard before the end of the day. And I was waiting him out. I thought, well, there must be a washroom break somewhere along. There was no washroom break. And at the end of the day, it was a Thursday, he had to head home. And so he left, and I thought, that's it. I left. And then I had a call from Marlene Catterall, who was come back here, he's gone. So my office was in West Block, so I ran through the tunnel, and I got to my seat, and Mr. Speaker, you will find, and I'm going like this, and then there was a big no from the back. Gary Brightcross, Reform Party was left, John left him to say no. And he dashed in from the back when he heard me put the question. And Patty Torsney, thank goodness for Patty, she was always good at details. And she shouted, Mr. Speaker, he's not in his seat and he does not have his jacket on. So the Speaker just kind of looked over and I carried on because the speaker ignores you if you're not properly dressed and if you're not. So I continued, and that was how we got unanimous consent for the statue.
That's fantastic. Perseverance. So I have a last question, but it's a big one. You are more active than most people of your age. What are you up to now, and what is next?
Oh,
Because I know you won't stop.
no, because to stop is really to say that my life has ended.
Agree.
No, I am blessed with energy. My brain is working, I think,
Yes, I can confirm.
right? My mouth is working, I think, or I know. And then the body says, who the hell are you making all these plans for? But I push on because there is much work to be done. And I think it's important for us to recognize that where we are, what we're doing, how we're supporting, is really a work in progress in Canada. We have challenges, but it's a work in progress. And that work in progress and what we're doing and why I continue to be engaged is because we're heading to a place that's fair and just and inclusive, and the march is on. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. And so as long as I am blessed with what? With a brain? I continue to give because I got so much and I want to give back and I want to make life better for so many other people because we're sitting at a nice dinner right now, good company, good clothing, good whatever, and I see on a daily basis the lives of others. And so I think we all have a responsibility to make that march towards that place where all of us will, give me a good ending here.
Well, I feel you have a lot of years to go because you have a very strong purpose. And we are so blessed to have you all. And me particularly as a black woman coming after you, becoming a minister now, you know. It's following your step. It's like a big privilege that we are all taking. I look to Tatiana here and also to Ariel, who are my black, well, I can say children. The next generation, and I feel we are all following your steps, because we have to make a difference. And I agree with you that we did progress, but we are not there yet.
Yes.
And it's a collective effort, not only for black people, but for the whole society.
Well, one of the things that I want to say before we step off the podium is how grateful I am for this honor, because it is an honor that I can quote Shakespeare, because they made us memorize a whole lot of stuff at St. Joseph's Convent with Mother Immaculata. This honor bestowed on me is really, really one of the highlights, and I want to thank all of you and all those, Pam and others who've worked so hard, Kevin, to make this the occasion, and those of you who contribute and who make this happen, because I think it's important for me to say that in all the work I've done over the years, I have not stayed siloed in the Black community. I worked on behalf of Canada and Canadians. I can walk into any room, Chinese, Indian, Vietnamese, whatever the organization, and feel very much that their issues are also
yours.
my issue.
Agree. Thank you so much, Jean. Thank you. Please, a big round of applause.